See that? See the authenticity? I'm leaving in all the boo-boos, all the mistakes. Welcome back. Carlos here. You're watching Scarlet and Sable's YouTube channel. We're continuing on with the Land Raider. This thing just refuses to end. Got black and raw umber, mixing it up equal parts using the sponge. What I do is I put it on a little piece of paper to the side, one of those dental prep pads that I highlighted in another episode. It's a piece of paper coated in a polystyrene or some kind of acrylic coating so it's slick. I just mix it up on the pad, I dab the sponge in it, and then I dab the sponge off onto another area on the pad and then start to sponge. It's important that you don't have too much paint onto the sponge, and you'll see why later in the video. But this is what I'm going to do to establish the roadmap for the chipping. That's a Michael Rinaldi term. We're kind of making like this blueprint or a schematic of where our weathering is going to be. And I'm not really thinking about it on like I have it mapped out in my head, but I kind of have a logical idea of where chipping is going to occur on edges, on easily accessible things to damage. And that's a preliminary step before we go in with the brush. Now I'm going in with the brush. So it's the same mix ratio, and this time I'm going to be adding water. I'm using a 10-to-1 mix of water to vegetable glycerin. You can get it at, the grocery store, or you might be able to get it online. This stuff is high quality, 99.9% pure vegetable grade, whatever they sell at Walmart. That's what I have, the Equate brand. So this is a pretty important step when it comes to doing the chipping. This is a two-stage process. You could do it all with the brush, you could do it all with the sponge. You don't have to do this part, but without the brush, we're not going to get these really fine lines. This is, to me, what actually makes this sponge very authentic, or more authentic, because alone it looks pretty good, but then with that kind of skeleton or schematic of the chipping, and you add in the brush chipping, it really starts to come alive. You can fill in areas, you can kind of link chips together, or you can do these long scratches. This is a technique that a lot of people use, but the person that I've seen do it the most effectively is Mig Jimenez. And until I started watching his videos, I didn't do these long horizontal scratches, which actually, when you think about when a vehicle is like driving through a city or the forest or brush or whatever, or ramming into stuff, it's going to be scraping along the sides of the hull. So how much you want to scrape away is up to you. I'm aiming at kind of like a medium-low level of chipping, I guess, if you were looking at it on a scale. And the gate obviously is going to drop down. So all this stuff I'm kind of thinking about before I do it, and I'm saying, okay, how is this going to happen? Where is it going to occur? Later on, you see I add in a little bit of artistic license. I'm sort of imagining maybe minor mishaps this thing might have had, or incidents or encounters, and I'm drawing in a chip. So there will be, or a scratch, there will be several scratches in a row, like maybe like some kind of a demon scratched the hull, or they rammed into something. And so you can kind of create these tiny little vignettes within your larger narrative that you're creating onto the vehicle. So it's probably better to maybe do something a bit more universal if you're going to be doing this on lots of different tabletops, but you can't really change the weathering every single time you're going to play if you're a player. So I think general, like a more like earth-like dusting. Oh, okay, look at that right there. See that? Yeah, tremendous. I just got a massive blotch of black paint right onto the hull, and the first attempt I make is just using water, and yeah, it's not going anywhere. That's one of the problems that you can have, and I did that on the horizontal surfaces. I thought I was going to get cute and create chipping inside of the middle of those larger panels, and on top of the hull right there, maybe you're going to have crew or whoever walking on top of the hull. So I was sort of trying to simulate that. Massive fail. And you can do that but that's obviously, and the reason why I left this in is because this kind of stuff happens all the time, at least when I'm doing it. And so we have to find out a way to recover, or we have to sort of figure out a way to incorporate it into our overall finish. In this case, I try to first use water. I also use my fingers. If you watch throughout the videos, I use my fingers a lot just to wipe away. The glycerin helps with that because it prevents it from drying too quickly. So now what I'm doing is I get the Vallejo airbrush thinner, and then I'm using a cotton bud, and I kind of generate a little bit of force. The reason why I didn't lift up a bunch of the paint, because this is all acrylic. This is an acrylic top coat over a acrylic color over an acrylic primer. So that particular coating is the Mission Models flat coat, and you can see the color starts to change because I'm actually peeling off that flat coat, and thank goodness it's there, because otherwise I would have taken up the paint and I would have had to go back and retouch. So I'm glad that I had it covered, and it's not perfect. There's still a little bit there, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't egregious. So I just continued on. And so now I'm refining these chips, and these chips over here, I think one of the things that I meant to mention and didn't is what they say in the Toronto Barbican. One of the things that Dave Forrest always says, "Oh, another boo-boo." And you can see there's a huge blotch right there that I only notice. Like, I'm so focused in, I'm so laser focused on what I'm doing that I don't even see that massive blotch right next to the ultramarine symbol. Anyhow, it's better to start on the bottom and kind of begin gently with the sponge and with the brush, and then work your way up across the model. You kind of give yourself a chance to get your hands warm. You give yourself a chance to sort of start to see the vision. And if you go slowly and lightly, you gain confidence, you get a handle on what you're doing, and then you can begin to build up. And so that's a very, very good idea. So whenever you're doing any weathering, always begin on the bottom of the tank. And nobody's really ever going to see it. And if something goes horribly wrong, you know it's on the bottom. So no harm done. Anyhow, I'm pretty happy with these chips. I do a little vertical, I do a little horizontal. You see me wiping away with the finger, like I said. And it's this part, one of the things that I've been doing lately, and I think it's helpful, is when you do these chips and you're using, like before I started using retarder, but it even still happens with retarder, is that when you have such a fine tip brush, it's going to dry on your brush. So a lot of times you'll be drawing the brush across the tank, and in the past my inclination was to either press harder or keep going and keep going and keep going until I had a mark that was far too big, far too out of scale. So just continue the motion, just do it very lightly, very thinly, don't adjust, and it will help you keep those lines really thin and flowing. If you start to change the pressure and the force, I think those are the same thing. If you start to adjust in the middle of your stroke, you're going to get like funky marks. So unless you want that, it's better to keep it flowing. And even if it doesn't leave a mark, just keep on with the motion and then go back and try again and go back and try again. And maybe you might need to wash out your brush and reload. But that's something that I've been finding very helpful when it comes to making these little longer chips. And as far as what I'm doing here, I mean, you can just see it. It's not anything. This is just brush control and practice. And I think, you know, with the if I can do it, you can do it. Okay, I think we have the engine coming up next. So here you see random color. Before this, I was getting in with the brush, and I was like, that's just a waste of time. I'm gonna get a larger brush, and this is a technique that, well, it's the same technique, but it's like a dry brush technique. And many times in the past, especially when I was aspiring, you know, you start to think that that kind of stuff is maybe for people who are more beginners or whatever, but really it's just about getting a nice, satisfactory, and quick result but still looking really good. And you can do that, especially on flatter surfaces with the dry brush. Why I didn't choose to do that on the rest of the tank, I don't know. I didn't necessarily want like that kind of scratchy, because it makes, like, if you use with the shape brush I'm using, with that shape brush, the flat, you're going to get a very distinctive mark. And you can twirl it in your hand and leave different marks, but it seemed more conducive, and it was also going to be heavily chipped. Since it's on the rear of the vehicle, I just thought I'd do something slightly different. And I also do a dual tone chip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down the gray chips, and then inside of the gray chips I'm going to lay down a dark rust color. So I'm going from the bottom to the top, and that's a technique that Lincoln Wright uses on his Mecha, And it actually is very effective. If you try it on smaller things and you do the bottom up, it's kind of like it's as if the damage is occurring in a way that it would sort of organically occur if the vehicle or the power armor or the person was in an actual combat environment. So it's useful. I think a lot of people they go from the top down, but if you go from the bottom up, it works kind of in a more interesting way, I think. Uh, can't do it all the time, but usually usually you can find a way. And I'm putting the dark rust, excuse me, inside of the gray chips. And that's about it. That's how we're gonna finish this one out. I'm glad you guys came to see this. We're picking up steam now. This is about, I don't know, 45, 47 minutes of chipping, winnowed down into a tight 11 minutes. So I hope you guys find something useful. And if anything seems out of sequence or I left something out, it could be due to my program. Sometimes it skips. So if you have questions, leave a comment and hit the like, and I'll see you in the next one.